This corner of Mulberry and Columbus has unfortunately been referred to as the Cursed Corner due to two events that took place within 20 years of one another: a murder and a huge home explosion. On July 10th, 1873, a man named George Schleich arrived near the current location of Focal Point Optometry with a wagon full of supplies. He was in the business of driving wells and was hired by Eleanor Weekly to install a well on her property. However, as Schleich was unloading his wagon, Weekly's neighbor came across the street to confront him. His name was Hugh Daugherty, and he was also a well driver. He had been feuding with Schleich for a while, claiming that he had rights to the county of Fairfield for driving wells, and only he was allowed to, a claim that he was never able to prove. The confrontation led to Daugherty pulling out a Smith & Wesson revolver from his pocket and shooting multiple times at Schleich. Schleich's co-worker, Perry Miller, yelled at him to run. However, Schleich stopped, turned to him and said, "Perry, I can't. He has shot me," then slumped down on the curb. Miller immediately took control of the horse and rode south on Columbus Street for help. At this time, about 50 people had arrived on scene, with resident John Zink being the first one to reach Schleich. He found a small hole in Schleich's left chest. Schleich asked him for water and didn't say anything else. Those were the last words that he would ever speak. Daugherty was found guilty of murder in the first degree and initially sentenced to death by hanging. However, his sentence was commuted by Ohio Governor William Allen to life in prison because he believed Daugherty was not in his right mind. Daugherty would not serve a life sentence. Instead, he would be paroled after just 15 years in the Ohio Penitentiary. George Schleich was 36 years old, a husband and father of 5 children. His wife, 1 month pregnant, would give birth to their 6th child the month that Daugherty's trial began. A prosecutor in that trial was a man named John Brassey, who would be involved in the other major incident on this corner, this time the southeast one. This was the location of the Brassey home, north of the English Lutheran Church. It was a beautiful 3-story brick home that had been fitted with natural gas, still a newer phenomenon at this time. Unbeknownst to anyone, a T intersection in a natural gas line broke. The resulting leaking natural gas began seeping into a sewer line, which had been improperly laid, and began to make its way into Brassey's basement sewage line. On the early morning of January 18, 1892, Brassey was in his office reading, while his wife Anna and 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, were sleeping on the 3rd floor. While reading, Brassey noticed a small flame behind a heating grate. He ran outside with a pitcher, scooped up well water, and extinguished it. Checking the basement, he found nothing, but did smell gas. When he went back to the office, he found that the fire had reignited, and he extinguished it once again. He decided not to wake his family and planned to call the Lancaster Natural Gas Company later that morning. Sitting down to continue reading, Brassey kept an eye on the grate. Then, at 6:30 a.m., a large explosion rocked the corner, and Brassey found himself buried to the knees in bricks and lumber, boards on his head, and blood running down his face, blinding him. With the help of his neighbors, the debris was removed, and he realized he was no longer in his home, but he found that he had been blown out in the middle of Columbus Street. Brassey's wife Anna, who was asleep on the 3rd floor, suddenly felt herself falling and landed in debris on the 1st floor with only her head sticking above the rubble. Wearing only a sleeping gown with bare feet, she pulled herself on top of what was the home's roof, ran across the street to grab a bucket, and helped put out the remaining fire. Their 2 daughters, Anna and Clara, also fell from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor, with Anna trapped for nearly a half an hour before being pulled out. The 2 sons, Charles and Trafford, were asleep at the home's rear and rushed to their sisters to help. Miraculously, nobody was killed, and besides some bruises, scrapes, and a couple head injuries, everyone was okay. Other structures in the area were damaged, including the church, which had its shutters blown off and all of the stained glass windows shattered. The Brassies moved to a new home on Fifth Avenue, and some residents became wary of natural gas. In fact, a servant from a local family in the neighborhood quit her job, saying, "You can have your newfangled gas if you want it, but as for myself, I will go back to the country and burn the good old-fashioned saw logs." These events, 19 years apart, gave rise to the idea of a supposed cursed corner. However, perhaps the man involved in both of these, John Brassey, was the one that was cursed, and not the corner itself. Be sure to look for more History Underfoot decals scattered around downtown Lancaster. And if you enjoy local history and want to learn more, become a member of the Fairfield County Heritage Association and stay up to date with all things history. You can join now at fairfieldheritage.com.